I don't know. You know what? It's so funny is like, sometimes I feel these topics are my kind of topics, but you know, one of the things is actually, you know what? I know what topic we're going to talk about. And
Hmm.
this is the topic that it's the number one, it's the first one on the list. And it's the first one on the list because it was the topic that I thought of when I originally said to you, Freedom, we should be doing a podcast. And this was the topic. And I didn't, we didn't discuss it
Death
at the time.
penalty.
No, that's the last one on the top. That's the last one. That's the one we both disagree on. So that's what's so funny about it. No, actually, this topic is, and it's going to sound funny because I title all the topics and it's woman versus woman. And it was on
Mm-hmm.
how it's women in the workplace. Cause I've been fired a couple of times, but only by female bosses who absolutely cannot stand me. So, and that's laugh, by the way. I've noticed like when I listen to our recordings and I let that little, oh, it drives me crazy. I'm like, that's got to be eliminated from this scenario. Like, let me boop, 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 start again. It's so I have been fired from at least 3 jobs, only by women bosses.
Interesting.
And none of them, well, actually, it's not true. One of them was because I was not producing to her satisfaction, and that was the newspaper job. And
Okay.
but she was the one that told me nobody liked me. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not buying that. Like, I'm unfortunately aware enough, or not the aware, what's the word where you're self-confident enough to know that it's not nobody likes me. As a matter of fact, you don't like me.
Right.
Everybody else loves me. You don't like me, and that's okay. Like, own it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But why is it so difficult for women? I mean, I get why it's hard for women to be bosses to other men because there's a lot of issues in that sense, right? Like men think they're superior, men hate women in charge. Not all men. This is not a blanket statement.
Right. Right.
But women should be helping women, and it is such a crazy fucking battle. At least for me. Do you find that?
So yes and no. I mean, have I? Yes. And unfortunately I've been probably guilty of some of it in some way in hindsight, not
That's interesting.
not no realizing it or thinking it at the time. I do think women have a really hard time in positions of, and I hate to use the word power, but I think one, there's only so many positions for us, right? Like, so say if you're looking at, I'm just using a round number, like there's 10 people on the board of directors, there's probably going to be one slot for the person of color, one slot for a woman, maybe two, and then the rest are going to go to the traditional men who have been groomed for these roles their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because of the competition of trying to move up, people get lost in that. There are some people that get lost in it. And then I also think it's, I had, like, I'll use myself as an example. I had a grandmother who told my cousins and I on a continual basis, boys are better than girls. Boys are better than girls. It was constant. We were just inundated with that. And girls will stab you in the back. Girls, you can't be trusted. And I think there's some generational piece to that. And I think that that's where there's that almost generational trauma that can filtrate through a lineage that we don't even recognize. But I mean, I remember fighting my grand. I think it stands out to me so much because I would be like, that's not true. Like, that's just not true. It would drive me insane when she would
Mm-hmm.
say, and I really fought back on it. But I also think that if you hear it over and over and over again, it does mess with your psyche, especially if you're not someone who's willing to say like, no, that's simply wrong. Right? Like
Right.
if so, and I almost feel like there is, and maybe I could be super duper wrong about this, but I wonder, it's more of a wonder, if anything, because I've done zero reading, like I don't know anything about this, but if it's also almost ingrained, right? Like, you know, how men are quote unquote wired to procreate and have sex with like as many and spread their seed. And,
Yes.
you know, but they need to like bring it in and actually be human and understand. But I wonder with women too, like if there's that competition to be the one who's getting seed, right? And so like there's this weird competitiveness almost ingrained within us that we're not even aware of.
Interesting, because I've never heard, I've always heard women are nurturing. We're the nurturers of the two, right? There's the
I
hunter
mean,
gatherer and the nurturer.
I think women are much better about it. Like I think when the managers and people that I've worked for that were women, I've had a mix of both. It's just like with men, like some are really helpful and some are will go for your throat and slit your throat in the middle of the night because you're not doing what they want them to do. Like
Yeah.
it I've just found that there's less of them. And I also think, to be fair, for a lot of women who are aggressive or assertive, get labeled as bitches, like they get labeled as being difficult, where a man doing those same things are looked at as like they're strong and you know they're working hard for their family, or they're, I feel like the perception of men who do the same things that women do a lot of the time, women are criticized a lot more because there is this idea that they're going to be nurturing or like better, and it's like they're not, they're still fucking human, and humans suck for the most part, and then you give them a little bit of power and they're just that much worse.
but so, and that's actually that's what I'm actually asking. Like, this thought process for me is, um I'm not saying that these women are bad bosses per se, although they are difficult people to deal with.
Yeah.
But what drives me crazy is like, I'm a woman, I'm gonna admit it. I am ambitious. I I plan on ruling the world, not literally, but I mean, like, I'm not I'm not your backseat kind of girl, right? Like, sit in the back, be quiet, do as I'm told. I'm not that girl. I'm not good at that. I want to be a winner. I want to be on a team that's the best team. I don't have to be the winner myself. As a matter of fact, I am all about the group. That's why I told you I love the tribe. So if you're my boss and I'm on your team, I'm not trying to take your job. I'm trying to make our team the best team there is. And they hate that in me, but my male counterparts, they're like, yeah.
I just, you know what, I hate to say this, but this has just been my experience, just my experience. So I have found that I've had incredible women bosses. And I think, and men too, like the mentors I've had, period, have all been white men. I mean, that's just a reality.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I've had many, but the couple that I did have. I think part of the difference too is insecurity. I think a lot of women, not all, I think a lot of them, and I do think men do too, but I feel like men are just built a little bit differently. Like women have a lot of imposter syndrome. I'm not supposed to be
Yes.
here. They're afraid they're going to be found out. They're not meant to. And I think there's almost an innate, it's easier to take it out on people that you don't feel threatened by. And it's easier to take it out on people that you see as equal to you or beneath you versus there's a certain pedestal that, especially, you know, I think it's not as bad as it once was, but like white men were put in this other box.
Mm-hmm.
And they treated them more as equals or allies, or even put them in a, like, that was a line they couldn't cross with them, but they could
Right.
do to us and make
Well, so,
themselves feel better too. I think sometimes people just have like lower self-esteem because they're still people,
yeah,
and people
that's true.
feel good making others feel like shit sometimes. They do. It's like
It's
really
true.
sadistic.
But you know what? Actually, you just made me think of something as well. And that is women are fighting battles that men don't have to fight, just like men fight battles that women don't have to fight. So I'm not saying,
100%. But
right.
men, but I do think the difference too with a lot of women is women are, and we don't talk about this enough. Like a lot of the time, the women are still the general caretakers at fucking home.
Yeah,
So a lot of these women who are in these positions are having to go home and become mom and two to three kids and a husband.
right. I agreed. And then, but then think about this. Then at the office, so women are fighting different battles than men. And sometimes I wonder if women don't say, look, and not intent, like this is not like overt, it's underscored, right? Like you don't realize you're doing it is, but I need to win that ally in that man in order to help me continue up the ladder. Because if that
100%.
if that man doesn't approve of me, then I'm not going anywhere. And
And
nobody gives
there's
a
more.
fuck what the other woman thinks.
Well, and there's so many more men in those positions, right? So
Right.
it's like if there are 25 leadership positions and 20 of them are men, your odds of being able to connect and pick a mentor, have someone who is helping you out in those positions, is going to probably be a man. And then you have the one woman and how much expectation is put on her.
Yeah.
It's like, because the bar is put so much higher already.
Yeah. So again, I'm that's why I'm not willing to say these women were bad bosses, although they were. but I'm not willing to say it. As a matter of fact, the last one, she was just a bad boss, right? I mean, I'm pretty sure in a meeting where she was trying to be hip, she told us she was a sex trafficker. I'm like, I'm pretty sure, you know.
What?
Oh God, yeah,
Hold on.
yeah.
Hold on.
Not she wasn't doing the traffic. She was doing the trafficking. Not she was. Yeah, that makes her a bad person in my mind. I'm like, we all like the entire room just sort of stopped. We all looked at each other, and that was the end. We like. Have you ever been in a room where suddenly there is no more conversation
There's no
at
air.
all?
All the
Yeah,
air is like sucked out of the room.
we were just all over like, did we just hear that? I think she thought she was trying to be cool, and we were like, that is not cool. That is
No.
horrid. So, but the other woman wasn't necessarily a bad boss. As a matter of fact, a lot of people liked her. She just didn't like me, and I'm okay with that. I would rather her say that.
Didn't say everybody else didn't like you.
Nobody likes you. Really? Nobody? Who? Give me a list. Yeah, she's like, everybody complains about you. Oh, everybody. And then come to find out, no. But she wasn't a bad boss, right? And then unfortunately, she did pass away recently of brain cancer, which I feel terrible. Like, you don't want anything bad to happen to anyone. The last one wasn't necessarily a bad boss. She was my business partner. And I did something wrong that she didn't like, and I'll never know what it is. Mostly because I ended up not asking her in the end. I'm like, why are we're battling about this? But I have to admit, it has done two things. One, good thing, and that is it has made me evaluate on an ongoing hour by hour basis how I treat people I work with as a woman, right? Don't say anything disparaging. Don't undermine people that I don't need to be undermining. Try and treat people with respect, be good to everyone. I mean, it's really forced me into this evaluation, which I love. I
Yeah.
like being a bright light in a dark place, right? Like if possible. But the other thing it's done is I will like no, I'm not taking that job. It's for a woman. Not doing it. I just remembered another really bad boss. As a matter of fact, she got fired for embezzlement
What?
at a nonprofit. And that's because I turned her in. I was like, we paid for this and this is not a business expense. And that was the start. And then I ended up finding thousands of dollars she embezzled. Yeah, she hates me, by the way. I don't blame her. I wouldn't want to get caught for bad shit that I've done either. I'm like, if I'm gonna do bad shit, I'd rather nobody notice.
Yeah.
Which is why I try not to do bad shit, because
Well,
someone's gonna notice.
that's the lesson. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just try not to do bad shit.
Yeah. So I've learned a lot from these women, but I'm like,
But you probably had a lot less men or a lot less women bosses too, right? Like the swath of your career, it's like
it's all men. Actually, you know what? I did have one female general manager. And so here is a fine example of what I am talking about. And this is what I struggle with. She was actually my general manager of one of the stations here in Las Vegas when I lived here the first time.
Okay.
And she is the reason I got hired for the job. She wanted a research director, and the two other men general managers didn't. And she went out. And it turned out to be great for me. It was a great job. I did a great job. They decided they wanted to hire this guy from another radio station. I think he was about to lose his job, right? Like layoffs. And they wanted to hire him. So they sent this woman into my office to sit me down and say, look, Sherry, we're going to create a new position and it's going to be your boss. It'll be a position above you. And we are creating this because we want this guy to come get this job. And we know you'll understand. And so I'm sure if you just shut up and get a paycheck, you'll be happy. And I just was nodding. And then she left my office. Now they sent the woman in to tell me this. And I was like, motherfuckers, right? So she left. I immediately picked up the phone and called HR and I said, hey, heard a rumor. Heard a rumor that they're going to post a new job. And he's like, oh yeah. I'm like, hey, will you let me know as soon as they do? And he's like, yeah, of course. He has no idea what's happening. And then they posted the job and I applied for it. And they immediately like freaked out on me. And then I almost said her name again. This woman took me to lunch and she told me she was very disappointed in me. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? You have worked hard to get where you are. If someone came to you and said, we want to hire a man to be your boss, and I'm sure you'll just shut up and take the paycheck, you're telling me you wouldn't have done something about it?
And what did she say? What was her response?
Silence. She knew I was right. So they decided not to have the job. The job went away. And so did she. And then I got the job in Portland, Oregon. So it all worked out. But I'm just like, why are women, and I like women. I don't think all women are bad bosses. I think mostly women are great bosses. Yeah. Really.
Yeah.
But why is it that women are always trying to keep other women down? I'm like, I don't.
But I don't think that's true. I think that that's a very general statement. I don't think that's true. I think that, I think if anything, women, I have found, especially in like the last 5 years, and my sense of time is totally awful, so I'm going with that. But I feel like women really, or maybe I'm just really lucky. Like maybe it's just the world I've surrounded myself with, but I feel like women are really trying to help other women, between jobs, between career advice, between helping with family stuff, planning. I don't know. I feel like women have definitely gotten much, much better.
Mhm.
And again, I may just be in a very different place in terms of like, but then again, like even with my job, it's like this is really interesting. I was approached maybe 2 weeks ago, approximately, about a position moving, like moving up in my company. And I ultimately chose not to go. I chose not to do it, to interview or apply for it, but when I was looking at the landscape, it was really interesting. It's like, it's all men except one that I'm aware of in that role, and all white men. And they're lovely. Like some of these people they're really great managers. I've worked for them. But I have to admit, a part of me kind of felt like, and I have no proof of this. I have no reason to think this, and it's maybe something that I need to work on, but it's like I really felt like, oh, we have this Black woman, we can use her to check the box that we had somebody apply for that job.
I get it. I imagine that happens all the time, Freedom. Right?
I know. And at the same time, it's so interesting because I was talking to someone who said, you know, as a white male, I feel like I'm the devil and put in the box, like everyone hates white men right now. And it's like, I mean, I don't think any of us really genuinely think that at all. I'm like, no, I don't in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's orange men that I hate. Not white, orange.
But I'm like, on the flip side, we also as women, especially women of color, feel like tokens. Like we don't know if we're actually being asked to do a job or if we're being, because it's like, oh, well, we as a company, we're trying to hit these quotas.
Yeah, but Freedom, I'm going to interrupt you because are you capable
of what?
Doing the job?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So why do you think they want you to take that job? I get what you're saying. I do agree with you. There is,
but that's not why I didn't apply.
I know, I get that, but I'm just saying it's okay to have that thought because I get it, right? Like, yeah, it could be you might be a ticking off the box, but you're still 100% capable of doing the job. I mean, like
100%.
Yeah, you're good. You're a smart woman. And just outside of knowing you as a friend, right? You're well read. You pay attention to the world around you. You are good at your job. And I know you're good at your job because you've been rewarded all throughout history of your life because you're good at your job. So I do hear what you're saying. You're right.
And again, I'm not saying that's the case here at all. Like,
right,
not
I totally get it.
Paper form, but it's like, it's just interesting that the psychology that kind of plays into that sometimes, and that we feel it all the way around, right? Like here's a man who's at the top of the chain, so to speak.
Yep.
Feels like the white devil.
Yeah.
You know, on the further end is a woman of color, and it's like that all of us, we're not just, I feel like sometimes we just want to put everyone in these boxes, and
You're
it's
right.
like we also all have complexities to us. And
that's why I asked this question about working for women, because I'm also forced to take a moment and say to myself, am I a horrible human being? Maybe I'm.
Oh my God, no. Everything
but
I know of you, you're not.
Well, but you know what I mean. I'm willing to say, wait, like, am I difficult? Maybe I'm difficult. Maybe I mean, like, I'm willing to admit that I'm probably difficult because I'm motivated, right?
And you expect things out of others. Yeah. 100%. Everyone can be difficult, though. Everybody can be difficult, especially if they're a perfectionist or, like, to your point, you're trying to make, trying to get to the next level. And when you're relying and dependent on other people to help you with that, it's very challenging not to have to push a little bit.
Right. Exactly. But yeah, it's just, when you're trying to fit into a planet full of people and you keep coming up against the same thing, like that's where I start to say, is it me? Like, okay, like I didn't embezzle the money, right? That wasn't me, but did I call her out on it? Yes. And then is it me? Am I the girl that calls people out on their stuff? And if so, is that the problem? It's just this process. But then I notice, men don't give a shit. Like, I'm like, you're a dick. And they're like, fuck you. Right? That's literally.
They've been bred to be that way.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
No.
To them. No. But if I've called a woman a bitch, I mean, there'd be hell to pay. And the only time I ever call women bitches is when I'm joking and I'm smiling and laughing at the same time, right? Like, you bitch. I don't actually so funny. Mean it.
This guy that I'm dating, like at one point, he was like, "What up, bitch?" or like something like that. And I was bothered. I was totally bothered by it.
Okay.
And you're ironic,
allowed. You're allowed.
But what's so funny about it is like, as soon as I see, like I was in Phoenix and I saw my girlfriend, she's like, "What up, bitch?"
You're like, yeah.
I'm like, it is just different.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It's not fair.
In that particular instance, it's, if it was your boss that said it, I'd be like, what? But it's your guy you're dating that you had great, fabulous sex with all morning. I'm like, you right? So you're, but that comes down to, it is what it is. Like, if it bothers you, it bothers you.
Now it does. I think I needed to hear like one of my girlfriends say it.
Yeah. So like, my newest joke is to call people show offs. So like, if somebody does something that's like great, or like they get they win on a video poker or whatever, where it's really, they have no control over it, I go, show off, and then they laugh because I mean it as a joke.
Of course.